In this video, we are going to make this car as fast as possible. This is my Toyota Sera, and it's pretty unusual. It has got no space in the back, and it has a ridiculous amount of glass. Previously, we've been improving this car with handling upgrades and by installing this 1.5 litre turbo engine. So today, the plan is to remove the engine, and then we'll install thousands of pounds worth of horsepower upgrades. Next, we'll get everything back together, and finally, we'll take the car to the dyno to see just how much horsepower it can make.
This video is brought to you by Incogni.
Okay, so we want to make the Toyota Sera as fast as we can possibly make it, but also, by the end of this video, I just want to get the car driving with all of that extra power because we actually haven't driven it yet with all of the mods that we've done to this car so far. Now, like a lot of the stuff we do on this channel, we're going to have to take one step back before taking two steps forward. So we do have to remove the engine.
So if you've been watching the build on the Sera, you'll know that we've pulled this engine out and reinstalled it more times than I can count, but I'm hoping that this is the last time that we have to do it. Now, there are various things that you've got to undo and parts that have to be taken out, but once all of that is done, we can put a pallet underneath the engine, unbolt the engine mounts, and then lift the car over the engine. Also, just a quick reminder that if you do enjoy these videos, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Okay, so that is the engine removed, and now that is done, we can move on to installing all of the modifications onto it, and the first mod I have bought is quite possibly the most expensive mod I have bought for any of the builds that I've ever done, and it is this thing right here, which is a Toyota Glanza limited slip differential gearbox. Now, before I tell you about this, a massive thanks goes to Dan at DJR Imports for selling me this. It is quite possibly the rarest item of all of the things I've got on this car, which is already quite a lot of rare parts. This is so unbelievably rare and hard to find because it is the stronger Glanza gearbox, meaning we'll be able to hold more power, but it also has a limited slip differential from Quaife, meaning we're going to be able to put the power down even better. It's going to help the car handle loads better. It is just a huge upgrade, and it's going to be game changing for how the Sera drives. But alongside this, we also have a stage 3 clutch, which is just sort of a necessary mod. We're going to be shooting for 250, 260, maybe 270 horsepower, and we needed an upgraded clutch to manage all of that power. So yeah, let's get it all fitted.
So to get our new gearbox and clutch installed, the first task is of course to remove the old gearbox, which is relatively easy. There's just a few 17 and 14mm bolts.
There we go.
I could then remove our old clutch, and once that was done, I could then attempt to get the new stage 3 clutch fitted, but that is when I noticed our first issue.
Okay, so some not so good news. This is not the right clutch for our flywheel. I may have bought the wrong one. It just doesn't fit. Like, you can see that that hole there is not in line with the hole there, and it's all wrong basically. I think this is almost a different diameter clutch. It is just completely wrong, long story short. So that means we can't get the new gearbox on, so we're gonna have to get on with potentially the next upgrade that we've got for the engine now, whilst I order a new clutch.
And that next upgrade is these injectors, which alongside being bright yellow, can actually inject a lot more fuel into the cylinders over our standard injectors.
Something about them being bright yellow, which just makes me think they're more powerful. Right, we can pop these off.
Now, because we will be adding more boost to our engine, or in other words, forcing more air into the cylinders later on in the video, to make more power, we also need to make sure that we can inject more fuel into the cylinders. This is because more fuel plus more air equals a bigger bang, and a bigger bang means more power. These injectors are just a piece of the puzzle to make that bigger combustion in our cylinders to make our Toyota Sera go even faster.
So as you can see, our beautiful new injectors have now been fitted, and now we can move on to the next thing we need to do with our fuel system, and it is actually to install this, which is a fuel pressure regulator or an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Now, to explain what this is, I have consulted Google, and it says it is to maintain a consistent fuel pressure across the fuel injectors, ensuring the engine receives the correct amount of fuel for optimal performance. So that's basically what one does, but because this one is adjustable, when we take this for mapping, it will allow the mappers to sort of get the right amount of fuel pressure along the fuel valve, and they can adjust it using this little screw there. So that's sort of what it does. We can now get it on. Okay, first we will remove this.
So to get our new fuel pressure regulator installed, the first step is to remove the metal fuel return pipe.
So that is our standard fuel return line with our standard fuel pressure regulator, and that one isn't adjustable, which is obviously why we are changing it. Okay, so we've also got this little sort of what would you call this?
Plate with the connection thing.
So we've got this plate with the connection thing, which we're going to put on the end of our fuel line, just like that.
So after getting the plate with the connection thing fitted onto the end of the fuel rail, I could then work on getting the fuel pressure regulator mounted onto the side of the engine. Once that was done, the next job was to connect the fuel feed line up to the fuel pressure regulator alongside a vacuum line which comes from the inlet manifold. So the final upgrade that we need to do to our fuel system is to install this Cytec fuel pump. And to do this, we actually need to go into the Sera and take apart some of the interior, and after doing that, it will give us access to the top of the fuel tank where we can remove the standard fuel pump. Now, an upgraded fuel pump is vital for making more power. As I mentioned earlier, we need to ensure that enough fuel can get into the cylinders of the engine to make a bigger combustion. And whilst we've already sorted out our injectors, we need to make sure that enough fuel can get from the fuel tank to those new injectors. And since we're going for a lot more power, we will be demanding a lot more from the fuel pump, and the standard one in the Sera just won't cut it, which is why we need this new Cytec one.
There we go. That is one fuel pump. That is massive. Look at the size of it.
So now the standard fuel pump assembly is out, I can crack on with swapping over the fuel pump. Now, since the Cytec fuel pump comes with its own wiring to make it work, I have to connect the new fuel pump wires with the standard fuel pump wires, and to do this, I'm using heat shrink connectors that have solder inside of them that melts when you put some heat on it, and this is one of the safest ways to do so. But if you want to make sure that your data is safe, then you need to use Incogni, the sponsor of today's video.
Okay, so that is our high-flow Cytec fuel pump now installed, and we can just get this whole assembly fitted back into the fuel tank. But in short, Incogni will make sure that your personal data is removed from hundreds of different data brokers.
Now, certain companies and websites will actually sell your personal data off to data brokers who can then sell that information to whoever is the highest bidder.
You see all of this information on the screen right now, all of it can be at risk, but Incogni is your secret weapon to stop that from happening.
Now, there's actually a law that states that data brokers have to delete your information from their databases within 30 days if you just request for them to do so.
But there are hundreds of data brokers out there that might have your information, so what do you do? Well, after creating an account, Incogni can send out automated requests on your behalf to hundreds of different brokers to make sure that your data is removed from their databases.
And once you've done that, you can actually track the progress of each request on Incogni's detailed view section. And once your data has been reclaimed, you'll receive way less spam calls, texts, and emails.
So to claim back your online privacy and security, click the link in the description of this video and use the code jackmcneill for a 60% discount on an annual plan with Incogni. And with all of that said, let's get back to that gearbox. Okay, so I think I've come up with a solution for our clutch not fitting problem. Basically, there are two solutions. Either I could get a new clutch to fit onto this flywheel, or I could get a lovely new flywheel to replace this that works with our lovely stage 3 clutch. And that's what I decided to go with. And I bought this absolute work of art. This is a lightened flywheel, a proper race car competition spec flywheel. And this is going to allow us to rev up even faster, and it's going to reduce our drivetrain losses ever so slightly as well, which will result in a little bit more horsepower. So with that said, this is going to make the car drive way better. Let's get it fitted.
So to get our new flywheel installed, I've firstly got to remove the old one, and there's just 6 bolts that I've got to undo.
We have a scale, so we can see just how much lighter our new flywheel is. Let's put him on. 7.9 kilograms. Okay, 7.9 for the old flywheel. What do you reckon the new one's going to be, Jav?
I'm going to guess 3.8.
3.8. I'm going to go with 3 on the dot. No way have you got... Wait, hang on. We need to read. The people are going to think we just faked that. Hang on. That is actually mad. 3.8.
So with the confirmation that our new flywheel was half the weight of our old flywheel, we could then get it fitted.
Good talking.
And of course, when doing this, we had to make sure to torque the bolts up to spec. Once that was done, the next job was to check if our stage 3 clutch would fit onto this new flywheel, and sure enough it did, which was a massive relief.
Job done. We can now get on our gearbox.
But before doing that, I firstly wanted to swap out the old clutch release bearing for our new one. And once that was in and fitted, I could then get the new gearbox onto the engine.
Okay, so that is our Toyota Glanza gearbox fitted with our Quaife limited slip differential, with our light and flywheel in there, with our stage 3 clutch, which is going to be an amazing thing to drive when it is all working. But now we can move on to the next modification, which is everyone's favorite, a new turbo. Well, here is our new turbo setup, and I am so excited to get this fitted. We have, firstly, a big turbo, and for the size of this engine, that is a big turbo. It is a TD04 turbo, and it's a hybrid as well, so it's been made more efficient. We're going to be able to spool up faster and make more power. We have this gorgeous tubular manifold, which is absolutely massive. That again is going to help with the flow of the exhaust gases as they come out of the engine. And we also have a big fat downpipe. We've got a screamer pipe as well, which is going to sound amazing, an external Turbo Smart wastegate, and a new oil feed line. We also have an oil return line on the way. So yeah, in terms of getting it fitted, we're actually going to install the engine back into the car first and then get this all on, because I don't think we'll actually be able to fit the engine through the bottom because this is just so big. So we're going to get the engine mounted up first and then get this all on.
So before we could get the engine mounted up, the first thing to do was to remove the old turbo and exhaust manifold, and whilst doing that I could also fit our new oil feed line. The next thing to do, of course, was to get our engine mounted up into the engine bay. And to do this, we could use a technique which we have used plenty of times on the channel before, and that's to lower the car over the engine.
Okay, so that is the engine in now for hopefully the final time. But now that's done, we can go ahead and get our turbo setup fit on there. But before we do so, I do just want to quickly show you how much bigger the new turbo setup is compared to the old turbo setup. This one is just going to make so much better noise. It's going to give us way more power. It's just going to be loads better. So let's get it on. There we go.
So after installing the new exhaust manifold and turbo, I could then get the oil feed line connected up, followed by the external wastegate and also the screamer pipe.
That actually looks so good. I am gassed with that. Oh, this is gonna be the sickest car ever.
Hell
Look how
yeah.
cool that is. Wastegate, screamer pipe, turbo. This is so cool, man.
So now that our new insane turbo setup is fitted, I can move on to just connecting everything back up in the engine bay. That includes everything from our throttle cable to our wiring loom, to our clutch line, to our drive shafts, and absolutely everything else this car needs to make it run. because this is a limited slip differential gearbox, we've got to use this Hypoid special 75 W90 gearbox oil. So don't really know why, to be honest, but we just got to use it. Oh, there we are. She's full. Yeah, we're gonna have to let her drain out for a little bit, but...
Okay, so that is the vast majority of the stuff reconnected back up, and the car is looking far more complete. But there is one big thing missing at the front of the engine bay, and that is our radiator. Now, our new exhaust manifold is absolutely lovely, but it has a problem. Our radiator will no longer fit. So, we have come up with a solution, and it is this little radiator. It's actually quite thick. This is a Civic half radiator, and it's aluminium and beautiful, and it is now going to sit in here like this, out of the way of our manifold. But there is a slight issue. As you can see, it is sitting quite high in the engine bay, so we're going to have to do a little bit of fabrication with the stock mounts at the bottom here. And we're just going to have to do quite a lot of fabrication overall with the exhaust. We need a brand new exhaust to be made. We need new boost pipes. We need to make a custom intercooler. There's so much stuff that we need to make. So you all know where we're going to go next, and that is the exhaust company. So we are now here at the exhaust company, and we have got a lot to get on with. So I have bought a whiteboard to write everything down. So let's go through it. Number one, a full custom exhaust. We're going to have to do a few modifications to the downpipe and weld a full exhaust from the downpipe all the way back. Number two, custom intercooler. We're going to have to make a custom intercooler. Number three, custom boost pipes as well. Number four, we're going to have to do a slight modification to the oil return pipe, because on the bottom of the turbo, as you can see, the oil return pipe doesn't go into our rubber oil return line. So we need to make a custom metal oil return pipe so it goes into the rubber pipe, if that makes sense. Number five, we need to do a custom radiator bracket so that we can mount our lovely radiator that's on the floor, and we can mount it in, as we mentioned in the previous clip, the radiator sits too high, so we need to do that as well. So we have got a lot to do here, but I think the first thing we're going to start with is the exhaust. Okay, so the first port of call is to make our exhaust, and we just need to build a full custom stainless exhaust from here. We need to go all the way through, past our anti-roll bar, around, through the heat shield, and we need to wiggle around here, over the top of our rear beam, and then it needs to come out of here. And we're gonna have a big sort of single exit Jap style exhaust tip is what I'm thinking we're going to go for. It's going to look amazing. Let's get started.
So for those of you who regularly watch my channel, you'll know exactly how a custom exhaust is made here at the exhaust company. They start off with a load of measuring and planning, and then they'll gradually build the exhaust up using TIG welding with stainless steel piping to make the most beautiful exhausts in the game. Not to mention, they sound absolutely epic when they're done as well. So whilst Josh was cracking on with that and building our new exhaust, Lav could focus on fabricating our new radiator brackets. Now, Lav's plan to securely mount our radiator involves creating 2 bottom mounts and a single top mount. And all of this will be fabricated using sheet metal, and then it will be welded onto the car. And whilst Lav was making really good progress with the radiator mounts, Josh was absolutely smashing out the exhaust. Once Lav was finished with creating the bottom radiator mounts, he could then weld them on. Then Lav could crack on with building the top radiator mount. Now, rather than welding this, Lav opted to drill a hole and install something called a riv nut, which will allow us to bolt this top mount together.
Okay, so the radiator is in. We've got a new top mount up here, as you can see, which has been bolted in. And then, as for our lower mounts, those have been welded and sort of fabricated into place to work with this radiator. And now that's done, the radiator is absolutely solid, and it's also low enough down so that the bonnet can close as well.
So Josh was now onto the rear section of the exhaust, and as you can see, he is now making the rear silencer. And to weld onto this rear silencer, Josh is making an awesome exhaust tip. What he's doing here is using a 4-inch piece of pipe and a blowtorch to make a really cool blue to gold to silver effect for our exhaust tip, which I just think looks absolutely amazing. There were then still some final bits of welding to complete. And then the exhaust was done.
Ouch. That's hot. That's really hot. There we go. I fully burnt my thumb off. Lovely. Extra professional. My poor thumb. Do I get a job? Am I employed?
So now that we've finished our radiator brackets and our exhaust, we can now move on to the quickest job of the list, and that's to do our oil return pipe modification. And after a bit of TIG welding and magic, Lav could fit on the new modified pipe, and as you can see, it connects up to our rubber pipe perfectly, which is another job ticked off the list.
Okay, so that is our exhaust done. That's our radiator mounted in properly, and also that's our oil return done. So that's 3 out of the 4 jobs that we needed to do, all completed. And the final thing is to get our lovely new front mount intercooler installed. Now, it has got a bit of tape and some mounts on it because the guys here have already started with fabricating it all up and getting this installed, but it's going to sit sort of at the front like that, and then the job is to get boost pipes coming off here to the turbo there, boost pipe from there to turbo, and then this boost pipe needs to find its way all the way to the throttle body just up there. So that is the job. Let's go.
Now, earlier I mentioned that we would build a custom intercooler, but what actually ended up being far easier was to just buy a universal intercooler that was roughly the right size and then build custom boost pipes for it. Now, deciding where to route these boost pipes required a lot of planning and mocking up with the front bumper, but once they'd come up with that plan, they could then focus on mounting up the intercooler and building all of the custom boost pipes. And because these boost pipes are made of aluminium and not stainless steel, it's a bit of a different skill set to weld this, and it can be more difficult. But of course, the guys here at the exhaust company can weld aluminium no problem. There was a little bit more stainless steel welding involved in mounting up the intercooler. But once that was mounted up, the last thing to do was to get all of the boost pipes routed correctly.
Okay, so that is all of the work now finally complete here at the exhaust company. The lads have been very busy. Our exhaust is looking absolutely beautiful. We've got loads of beautiful TIG welding, our flexi, our sort of middle silencer, and then the exhaust comes all the way around to our rear silencer with a 4-inch Japcan style exhaust tip, which is just looking great. And our intercooler and all of our boost pipes are now done. Our boost pipes now come from our beautiful turbo just here. All the air will come through here, and then through our intercooler, which is obviously cooling down that turbocharged air, and then it comes around all the way up through to our throttle body. So that is now complete, done. We've done our radiator, that's mounted up. Our oil return has now been done as well. We are finished, and we can now go back to the unit because there are a few little jobs that we need to do before we can take this car for mapping. Okay, so there's only 2 more jobs that we need to do before we can get the Sera on a recovery truck and take it to the mappers. And the first one of those jobs is to wire in the radiator fan because it currently isn't connected up to our loom. That will allow the fan to turn on when everything gets hot, which will allow the car to be cool when it's on idle. And also, we need to just put coolant in it and get all of that bled up as well. So this is the wiring which came off the old radiator which lived in the Sera, and that plug connects up to our wiring loom. And this is the wiring which came with our new radiator. And as you can see, it has a blue wire and a black wire. And also, the standard wiring has a blue wire and a black wire. So I'm going to connect the blue up to the blue and the black up to the black, and then have it so this plug is basically connected to this rad fan, so we can plug it into our wiring loom, and then it should all work.
So to connect up these wires, my plan was to just crimp them, and to do this I could just cut the wires, strip them back, and then put the exposed ends of the wires into the connector and then crimp the wires together. Once that was done, I could then fit the radiator back into the car and connect up our new wiring to our wiring loom.
And hopefully that should work.
And then the final thing to do was to fill the cooling system up with coolant.
That is certified pouring skills right there.
Now, because I didn't have actual coolant, I just decided to go for water for now, but I'll make sure to change this later on.
Well, that is absolutely everything that we needed to do to the Sera to get it ready for mapping. I could have put the bonnet and the bumper and the wheel arch lining back on, but don't really have time for that because our transport is here. So we've got to get the Sera on the recovery truck. As you can see, it is night time, and then we're going to head over to the mappers in the morning and get this thing on the dyno. I am so excited. So we have now arrived here at SSA Performance, and these guys actually specialise in the engine which we've put in the Sera. So they really know what they're doing, and obviously I know what you all want to see, and it is this thing on the dyno, seeing how much power it can make. But before we can get it on the dyno, we actually have two jobs to do whilst we're here. And the first one of those jobs is to install something called a boost controller, which, if I show you, on the turbo is a little port there, and also these two ports on the wastegate. The boost controller will connect up to those, and also it will have some electrical wiring which will go into the cabin, connected to a gauge which tells us how much boost we have, and that will allow us to control the level of the boost of the turbo. So we need to do that, number one. And number two, we need to install something called a piggyback ECU, which is a lot of wiring, and that will allow us to change different sort of aspects of the engine, like the fuel injection, for example. And that will all allow us to map the car properly. So we've got to do those two things first, and then we can get started with the power runs.
So Reese from SSA Performance could begin installing the GFB boost controller. Now, one of the amazing things about this boost controller is that it will actually allow us to change the map of the car on demand. We'll be able to have a low boost map for running errands and going to the shops, and a high boost map for racing BMW M3s, which I just think is so cool. Once the boost controller was installed, Sean from SSA could then come and install the eManage Blue Piggyback ECU, which involves a fair bit of wire splicing. This piece of kit will allow Sean to control a couple of different aspects of the engine to make it run optimally with all of the modifications that we've added. After that, there were some final checks to do. We could fill up the car with Shell V-Power, and we could adjust the fuel pressure to 3 bar. Once all of that was done, the car was ready for the dyno. So this is it. The moment that all of the time, money and effort that we've spent on this car has been building up to. This project has absolutely tested my perseverance, and at times it has felt completely cursed. For those of you who have watched the whole series on this car, you'll know that this is the third engine that we fitted, and that we've built this engine from the ground up, which is something that I've never done before. Now is the time to find out if it's all been worth it.
So that's all the jobs that we needed to do done. The Sera is on the dyno. We are now ready to do some power runs. So we are now getting ready for power run number 1.
So this first power run is just a safe lower boost run to check that the car is running right under load. And the boost level that we're going for this first run is 0.4 bar of boost.
Right, we're going.
So that first power run at 0.4 bar of boost is already 198 horsepower, which is absolutely insane. For reference, this is not even half of the boost that we're going for, so we are in for some strong numbers.
Time for our second power run. That sounds so good.
So after increasing the boost to 0.5 bar for power run number 2, the car was now producing 215 horsepower.
That's mad, isn't it?
That's really strong power.
Really strong. So half a bar, and what was it? 215. 215.
Normally at half a bar, it's about 180 horsepower to the track. So yours 35 horsepower over average right now.
35. Wow. Wait, look at this.
So with us now feeling confident that the car was performing really well, we decided to turn the boost all the way up to 0.65 bar to see what the car would produce then. So with that 0.2 bar increase of boost, the car's horsepower jumped all the way up to 251 horsepower, which for an engine of this size is absolutely crazy.
So we've just come outside of the dyno room now, and the bottom line is that the engine is overperforming. We did several power runs, and we gradually increased the boost from 0.4 bar all the way up to 0.65. And at 0.65, it made 251 horsepower, which is way more than they expected at that boost level for our engine, which is really good. They've said it's one of the best performing non-forged engines they've seen here, which is crazy to think that we built that and it's working well, because this car has felt cursed at times throughout this build. But we now have a choice. We can either stay safe at 251 at 0.65 bar, or we can push it even more, and I think I know what I'm going to do. I think we're going to turn it up even more. So let's get inside, do one more power run and see what it makes. Last one. Fingers crossed. Horsepower. That is incredible. This thing is going to be an absolute rocket. I reckon it'll be faster than the Fox. I reckon it will be. It's way lighter, and it has an unlimited slip dip as well.
And I wasn't joking, the Sera weighs just 930 kilograms, meaning that at 260 horsepower, it has a better power to weight ratio than an E46 and an E92 M3, and it's actually pretty close to the power to weight of a Lamborghini Urus. So make sure to like, subscribe, and use my code jackmcneill.deal at the checkout for a 60% discount off an annual plan with Incogni, and I'll catch you guys in the next one for the first drive.